I will share it once it is live.
Hello, my lovely Rose Garden. I am here live today with author Jillian Maria to talk about her upcoming release of There's Magic Between Us. This is her second published novel, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct?
All right, and the first one, The Songbirds Refrain, is one of my all-time favorites from the indie author community. You can pick it up for 25% off in our Roselin bookstore for the rest of the month. And do be sure to check that out. There are links in the description not only to my bookstore, but also to the pre-order links on Amazon and Barnes & Noble for There's Magic Between Us. I will be reviewing it in my June reading wrap-up, and it got a very high rating, but you don't have to take my word for it because Jill is here to tell us all about it. Is it okay if I call you Jill?
Yeah, that's fine. I go by both.
All right. And before we get started on the interview, I want to do a sound check. So do be sure in the chat. If you are not able to hear me or Jill, let us know now, and I can make some adjustments.
Hi. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm going to share this link a few places to see if we can't get other people in.
Yeah, it looks like more people are coming in, so we're going to give them a second. Janae is here. Hello, Janae. Janae is one of my patrons, and I love her dearly.
Hello.
All right. I'm not seeing any comments regarding not being able to hear anybody, so I'm gonna check.
Assume it's good.
Yep, checking my streaming software. Streaming software is picking you up fine.
Excellent.
So we should be good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about There's Magic Between Us. I have a couple interview questions here for you. But before we get to that, could you tell us a little bit about what this book is all about? And I do have a comment here saying that you're a little quiet, but still audible. So.
Okay, well, if it gets to a point where you can't hear me, let me know. But yeah, no, There's Magic Between Us is a young adult FF fantasy romance. It's contemporary fantasy about a girl named Lydia who visits her grandma's small town and comes across another girl in the forest who's hunting magic treasure. So together they sort of look for the treasure and feelings happen.
As it always happens on these kind of small town trips, you just always end up meeting someone, whether it be your new best friend or a love interest.
Indeed, and in the world of YA romance, I think love interest just sort of happens, except this time it's gay.
Which is kind of the brand for you. We do a lot
Indeed,
of sapphic
yes.
romance. Because the Songbirds Refrain is, and I will try not to mention that too often, I just love it very much. Songbirds Refrain is also sapphic romance. So we're building a strong brand for the girl-loving girl audience.
Quite. It's basically, my brand is take the tropes I liked reading growing up, but then make them gay.
Stan.
Yes, but
absolute
I will say
queen
that,
shit.
Just for the record, the Songbirds Refrain is less romance focused, I'd say, for the main character at least. Like that was a suspense. This is a romance, so there were certainly romance elements in Songbird, but it is different.
Yes, this one's definitely a much more direct romance because this one doesn't have as much of the dark fantasy kind of trope stories that Songbirds, because Songbirds was a supernatural suspense. This is a fantasy romance, so there is a difference.
Yeah. Indeed, and
I love them
it was
both.
very exciting to write a ship that actually got to talk to each other more than a handful of times.
Yes, just the amount of interaction between Lydia and Eden, and Leiden. You know what? Okay, we're gonna slip of the tongue, but I'm gonna make that their ship name.
Beautiful.
Lyden, Lyden.
I like it.
Their interactions are so fantastic. I think that they get a lot of time to really flesh out their relationship, which I think is something that in a lot of the traditionally published YA romance I've read doesn't end up happening. So I was very excited to read in There's Magic Between Us so much development and back and forth between these two people as they're kind of figuring out their feelings and getting into, they're going through all the plot stuff, but they're also taking time to get to know each other. And
Mm-hmm.
even though it's only like, the whole book takes place over the span of about a week, but you really feel like you have the time to get into these characters' heads and understand who they are as people. And I loved that, and I'm gonna try not to gush too much because, like I said,
Oh,
there is a review coming out in my June wrap up where I will go into full detail on my thoughts. But this isn't a review; this is an interview. So,
gosh, please don't compliment me. No.
oh, how terrible!
But yeah, no. I'm also reading the comments, and Jeanette, is that how that's pronounced? I'm
Janae,
sorry.
I think.
Janae. Yeah. Thank you. And yes, the cover is gorgeous. It's by Leah Rose, and like, look at that thing.
Your covers
Oh
are
my
always
goodness.
so incredible. I am shooketh.
I saw Leia's art on one of Sky Kaleem's covers and just immediately knew like that's who I needed for this book because it was exactly the vibe I wanted.
And it's so good with like the
It's
bridge
so
and then the
good.
water and
Oh, she absolutely knocked it out of the park.
and I didn't even get to go off yet about the title and how perfect the title is for this
Oh,
book
thank
because
you.
just, okay. Like I had like this big brain moment last night. I was just like lying awake in bed thinking about There's Magic Between Us because that's the kind of book this is. I finished reading days ago, but I'm going to be thinking about it for months.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and I was thinking about the title and I'm like, "Oh, it's so perfect because the idea of something being between two people means so many different things. It can mean that it's what's connecting you to that person, like it's, oh, we have this between us. There's like this secret aspect where, oh, just between us, like, so, because, magic is kind of a secret
Mm-hmm.
in some aspects. And then there's also the fact that, like, something between two people can be what's coming between them and keeping them apart. And I think all of these different meanings of there's magic between us are kind of explored in the book, where it's
Yeah,
the
I'm
the
glad
search
you
for the
picked up on
treasure is
that
what brings them
because
together, and there's so much.
that was all very on purpose. So I'm glad it translated. um,
No, I picked up what you were putting down there.
Beautiful.
It's
Also, I want to
perfect
say
title.
hi to Linked and Christina, are friends of mine. They both showed up. So hello. But yeah, no, absolutely. The working title was actually called Fairbrook Bridge. The bridge was kind of a more intense element of the first draft, but I wanted to keep, bridges are the kind of idea, exactly what you said, it like connects people, but it's also can stand between people. And I wanted to kind of keep that element. So when I was brainstorming new titles, the word between kind of kept showing up. And so that's kind of how it ended up working. In the end, I wanted to be like kind of a longer phrase title because I felt like that kind of suited the genre. And this is the one I landed on, but I was really happy with it.
And it worked out perfectly.
And yes,
And
Janae, it is hinted on the cover. I actually, in this specific sketch, Leia didn't have the bridge, and I asked her to please put it back because I wanted to keep that image because I really felt like it was a core image in the book, even if it doesn't really have plot relevance anymore the way it had in draft one. But on like a thematic level, I liked what it stood for, so I wanted to keep it in there.
gotta have that threshold crossing. And
Mm-hmm.
13 Roget, who I also refer to as Broget, um, I never have figured out how to say your username out loud. I'm sorry. Has a question of is the setting urban fantasy?
In like the broadest sense of the genre, yes, it's fantasy in a contemporary setting. I prefer contemporary fantasy just because it takes place in a small town, so it feels weird to call urban. But yes, is short answer.
Yes. If you look at like the broad definition, technically,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those genres are so weird.
like with all things literary, you can kind of it's subjective as to what counts
Mm-hmm.
as what.
Yeah, but I
And
usually use contemporary fantasy when marketing, just because I feel like that's kind of captures the vibe better.
the aesthetic.
Exactly.
Right, so I'm gonna take a look at the interview questions that I have
Go
set
for
here,
it.
because I feel like it just kind of with oh gosh, is it Christine or it's Christina? Because that's
Hmm.
Christina writes fiction on Tumblr, right?
Yes, that is.
Who I love.
Yes,
Shout
so good.
out. One day I hope
We
to interview
stand
you
under
as well.
no illusions.
All right, so in your acknowledgments, you
Mhm.
talk about how There's Magic Between Us appeared as a vivid but not very fleshed out idea in your mind suddenly, and then through encouragement from your writing group, which you call the Ava Squado, which Stan, uh, through their
Yeah,
encouragement,
it's a very convoluted inside joke.
it just sounds great. I love it. But it's like you had this idea and then they kind of encouraged you and then it became a fully fledged novel. And you've talked a little bit about it, but would you tell us more about the initial idea and how the story of There's Magic Between Us developed? So you mentioned that like the bridge had more plot relevance at first. Was there anything else that kind of went?
Absolutely. So the first image I got was, I think I was working and I had some music on in the background, and the song just sort of called to mind this image of these two girls sitting in a forest and having a picnic when it starts to rain, and they had to run off and find shelter. And there was like this really, like, you know when you get those plot beats that like you can kind of smell and hear, and like it was sort of like that. It was really intense, but there was absolutely no plot. And I kind of sent a joke message to the chat, like, hey, don't you guys, isn't it so weird when this happens? I think maybe like 5 minutes after I sent that message, I got a thought of like this plot idea where this girl, very stereotypical city girl, goes to small town, is salty about it, but then meets a girl, and romance ensues. And so there was this very basic idea. And so I was like, oh, dang, I guess it has some kind of plot now. I guess I'll take like 10 minutes to just type out my thoughts. And the more I typed, the more it just kind of kept coming. And I promptly took several hours off of my work day and wound up working late to make up for it, because I had to like get this thought out of my brain and it just wouldn't leave me alone. And so I kept writing it. Lydia's voice from the beginning was really, the way you hear it now is like a polished version of draft one's voice. She always had this very distinct narrative style, and she wouldn't shut up in the back of my brain just constantly. So I just kept writing and it kept going. But
Oh,
the
I know
actual
that
plot of,
mood.
oh, I'm sure you do. I think most writers have had that moment. But the plot itself, yeah, was quite different. The treasure hunt didn't exist in book one, and Eden's backstory was very different. And there was more of a concept of like different worlds. Lydia also didn't know that magic existed until about the midpoint. So the tone of the book was very different. The plot was very non-existent, to be honest with you. So
First drafts, that's how it goes.
it does. It does. I just sort of had to get an idea of what I was about. But there was always this core of, um, you know, funky kid goes to small town and magical adventure ensues. And to answer your question, Broget, to borrow your pronunciation,
Yeah,
I
I think
don't.
it. They said I
I
think it is
think.
just Roget, but I.
Oh, Broget.
They said it's like
Well,
from the dictionary, and I'm like, I've never seen that word in the dictionary. I'm
it's in my
sorry.
head now. But so can it be seen as gay Gravity Falls? Well, now I would love to write a gay Gravity Falls. But I will say tonally, it's a bit lighter than Gravity Falls. It's not so.
There's not as much on the mystery element, I
Yeah,
don't think.
for sure.
Because Gravity Falls has a lot of like mystery and intrigue, and I feel like
Hmm.
this is more like fantasy
It's
adventure almost.
yeah. It's very, especially in the first half. You know, it's a slow burn.
It's a tad cozier, I think, than Gravity
Yes,
Falls.
cozier is the word I would go for.
But Gay
Um,
Gravity Falls sounds excellent.
you put that idea in my head, so I'm gonna have to tuck that one away for a rainy day. And yes, it is wild to consider that the treasure hunt did not exist in draft 1, considering the fact that it's the entire plot. It was a lot of Lydia and Eden just vibing for a good chunk of the novel, having picnics or going on little, like, pseudo dates that weren't really dates, and it was very different, tonally. But it was also very aimless, so I had to give them something to do, which is why I made the treasure hunt happen.
Yes, and the scene that you described earlier with them on a picnic and then it starts to rain, that is still kind of in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was super cute.
That became the treehouse scene, which I know this question is later, but is one of my favorite scenes because it was one of the first scenes I came up with, but also I'm just a huge sucker for the caught in the rain trope. I just like it. I like it a lot. I think it's neat. So yeah, no, that the spirit of that scene did stay, even if the setup was a little different.
All right. And looks like we have a question from Atlas Schmidt. Welcome to the stream. What characters will we meet besides Lydia and Eden?
Well, first off, I have to point out that Atlas is the one who did the character portraits that you see on my social media.
Oh my god, those are so gorgeous.
I know, he's a great artist. 10 out of 10 would recommend, but just throwing that out there. But yeah, so other than Lydia and Eden, we also meet Lydia's grandma as a main character. That's who she's in Fairbrook to visit. She's a very, the cottagecore grandma we all deserve. And her
I
mom
love her so much.
I want to be Dorothy when I grow up. Charlotte is Lydia's mom. She's less of a character just because she doesn't stay in the book, but she's still a pretty significant presence, I think, and she's just, trying to do her best is really what Charlotte is doing.
I could always kind of feel the presence of her relationship with Lydia, even when she wasn't on screen, like just from the way Lydia acts, I could tell what kind of relationship she had with her mom.
Absolutely. That was one of, I think, the earliest things after the initial idea that came to me was their dynamic being this very, supportive and loving, and maybe they're not super serious with each other, and, sometimes I think Charlotte will act a little bit more like a friend than a mom, but it's still rooted in this very real, like, love and support, and that banter of them sitting in the car together was actually the original opening scene was them just kind of chatting in the car, and I added the gas station scene later, but that the core of their relationship has always been very solid to me. And as for other characters, there's also Florian. He is a fairy who lives in the woods, and he's just a very...
That's a fairy.
Yeah, he's very fey. He's very playful, just a very chill dude. A chill dude who's living in the forest. But I am very fond of the entire cast. They've all got a special place in my heart.
They were all fantastic. I think there was not a single character that I did not like, aside from the general townies who are all bitches and hoes, but, yeah. Small town. Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know where I'm getting Wisconsin. I think I'm getting...
Yeah, no, Wisconsin is right. That's where it is.
Okay, good. I thought that I was, like, crossing it over with, like, Infinity Train, which I just watched. Oh. Which, by the way, Lydia going through Infinity Train would be a ride, but
I think
I'm gonna fanfic that now.
If anyone were to go through Infinity Train, I feel like Eden would be the interesting one.
Oh, yeah, Eden would be the more likely one to get pulled onto the... Okay, I'm gonna fanfic this later. This will go.
We are gonna get to spoiler territory, but Eden's got a lot to deal with.
Yeah, she's very involved.
Yeah. Rogan asked, how does the magic work in this world? Well, there's different kinds of magic in this world, and it's kind of the basic system is it is just the modern day world, and most of the world doesn't think that magic exists. But in Fairbrook, there are a certain number of witches, and it's actually pretty similar to, like, how real life magic works, just a little bit more tangible, but, like, it's still very... for example, Dorothy is a kitchen witch, and she sets intentions into things when she bakes. So,
I squealed in happiness when I read that because I am
yeah,
also a kitchen witch, and I was like,
exactly.
it's me!
So,
Representation.
yeah, no, very, very similar vibes to just how, modern day witchcraft works. But there is also Fey magic, which is a little bit more complicated. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it without getting into spoiler
A
zone.
bit more potent,
So,
I would say.
yeah,
but yeah, that is
but for the
kind of
purposes
spoiler
of the
territory.
treasure, yeah, for the purposes of the treasure hunt, for example, there are 7 pieces of a staff, and if you put it together, it can do magic. But in order to find the pieces, you have to look at the last piece that you found, and there's a riddle on it that will lead you to the next piece. And that is something that's very mysterious to the point where the Fae even really aren't sure how it works. So it's a very mysterious kind of magic that isn't very well understood and is in fact maybe a little bit feared in certain cases. But it's very powerful, especially in the Fae world, which is not available to humans at this point in the narrative, but used to be. So it's very complicated.
Can't say much without spoiling it.
I know, it's hard.
We're gonna try not to spoil because you should buy the book and read it, and there are pre-order links in the description if you're just joining us now.
And what AU fanfic would I want to see someone write about TMBU? Oh goodness.
I'm just in the corner being evil, being like, what if I Songbird Refrain AU? There's magic between us.
Poor Lydia would not do well. Like, she hates being like having to
told
sit
what
still
to do.
Anywhere, so that would just she would not end up well in that. She would just be very upset. But oh gosh.
I feel like Eden, if we put Eden in the Songbirds Refrain, I feel like she might have a very similar arc to Elizabeth, maybe different motivation,
true.
But I feel like she'd kind of do the same where she's like sort of despairing until she finds a reason to sort of fight. And we don't want to include spoilers for Songbirds Refrain either, but you should also buy that, just just saying.
Well, it is on sale at your store.
It's 25% off right now for the rest of the month. You only got 3 more days to get it, so go to Roselin Bookstore and pick it up, and then while you're doing that, also pre-order There's Magic Between Us.
I would be interested to see what a Hunger Games AU would look like for these guys, because I feel like their personalities, Lydia being so like off the cuff, just can't, very reckless, and Eden being very methodical planner. Seeing them in a life or death situation like that and seeing how those specific skills would either clash and or work together would be interesting.
I see Lydia's like the fight one, and then Eden has like all the survival skills.
Exactly.
Like the find the water, find the food, make a shelter. Like Eden's doing all that, and then Lydia's like stabbing people.
She would. Bless her heart. But yeah, I feel like they'd quickly form an alliance, and that could lead to some fun drama. So yeah, that's probably what it would be.
All right. Moving on to the second interview question.
Yes.
How did the process of writing There's Magic Between Us differ from your previous novel, Songbirds Refrain, and in what ways was the writing process the same?
It basically followed the same skeleton, which is I write draft 1, I write draft 2, I send it off to critique partners, I write draft 4, send it off to beta readers, edit the draft, and then get into line edits and that sort of thing. But the actual process tended to differ a little bit in execution, just because this book is very different and what it needed was very different. So with Songbird, where a lot of my effort went toward making sure that the mystery beats hit and making sure that the plot made sense, a lot of the edits in There's Magic Between Us was more character focused, making sure that the characters played off of each other in a way that worked. And in both cases, pacing was a big issue, just because that's something that I never get right in draft 1. But
I have yet to meet the author who does.
But There's Magic Between Us was much more character focused, making sure that their arcs made sense, making sure that their relationships were authentic, and things like that.
All right, and then so that sounds pretty standard, like following the base skeleton, but because these are such different stories, they're going to need different edits.
Absolutely.
So, pretty straightforward answer on that one.
It wasn't too exciting.
I still think it's good for people, just to hear how writers do what we do.
Indeed.
And then, so here's a fun question. Your acknowledgments also mentions that the setting and aesthetics of There's Magic Between Us are partially inspired by your own grandparents' house and exploring the small forest on their property. Are there any specific details about the setting that are taken from your real life? Like what other,
yes,
parts
absolutely.
of the grandparents' property, anything else?
I actually, a little bit ago on Instagram, shared some comparisons of photos of my grandpa's property versus quotes from the book. But so my grandpa's house is on top of a hill, and he has a very big yard that kind of slopes down, and then there's a stream, and where it hits the stream there's a forest on the other side, and he's got like an acre of land or something on that side that's just forest, and there is indeed a bridge that you can cross the stream to get into the forest. So that image was very clear to me from the beginning, because that is drawn directly from his property. And we are also, he's in Michigan, so it's still vaguely Midwestern.
Right, and it's such a beautiful setting, too.
Yeah, I definitely, made it a little bit more pretty. Like, I will say that the stream that separates the forest from my grandpa's yard in real life is not as pretty as that one you see on the cover. It's a little brown. It's a little muddy, but I felt justified because there's Fae nonsense happening in the book. So
we get that pretty clear blue water.
Exactly. So, idealized a little bit, but the feeling of it is very the same. Because it does, going in there as a kid especially, it felt very magical to cross that bridge and to be in a completely separate landscape. So I really wanted to just capture the feeling of what it felt like growing up as so much as exactly what it looks like.
It definitely comes across as that semi-nostalgic kind of vibe to it, where it's you could definitely imagine that, this is a very well-loved home that has been in the family a long time. Were there any other settings that came from your real life, anywhere in Fairbrook, or there's a lot of town meetings in Fairbrook? Was that anything that was drawn from real-life inspo, or was that totally fictional?
That was more or less totally fictional. I'm sorry, I stopped being able to do words for a moment.
It happens.
The kind of insular social dynamics and the, kind of gossipy cattiness. I went to a Catholic school growing up, so...
Say no more.
That very small group of, people who will judge every little thing you're doing, it was kind of very much drawn from that. But as far as, I never really had to worry about, an HOA or anything like that, so...
HOA is the bane of my existence.
Yes, but Fairbrook is essentially a big magic HOA.
God, HOA. I'm gonna move on to a different topic before I start ranting about HOAs and the fact that I would have a condo by now if they didn't exist.
Oh, poor thing. I know, they're crazy.
Janae's got a great question. What was your biggest darling that you had to kill, if you can say without spoilers?
There were a few. There was a really cute scene where Lydia and Eden were picnicking, and Lydia brought her guitar and tried to serenade Eden, and it was this very awkward teen flirting thing that did have to go to the cutting room floor, unfortunately, because there just wasn't the time to do it. So that's one I miss.
That sounds adorable. I could only imagine the kind of jams that Lydia would Because
It was
the way she
sapphic
comes
jams.
across, it's
Yeah.
like I imagine her being into kind of more like the punk rock scene, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously
Oh,
it would be an
absolutely.
acoustic guitar, but like just her trying to like,
Shred on acoustic guitar.
I love
I
you,
think
bitch. I'm never gonna
yeah.
stop loving you, bitch.
I think I had her do a cover of a male artist's song and very purposefully not change the pronouns to gauge Eden's reaction. I think that was the beat I landed on for that, to see like how she reacted to that, because she's still at that point trying to figure out if Eden's gay or not.
Which is always the struggle.
Yeah, I think, and that particular, her kind of clumsily trying to gauge where Eden's at on the queer side of things, did live on until the final draft. It just happened in a different way, because I think that is a very universal experience when you're having a crush on someone of your gender, of trying to figure out like are you though?
Are we compatible? I mean, honestly, at this point, it's gotten to a point in my life where almost everyone I know is queer in some fashion, so I've almost forgotten straight people exist.
God, that does happen though.
What do you mean not everyone's bisexual? What?
Pardon?
And on that note, I do want to raise that there is explicitly stated pansexual representation. Right off the bat, Lydia makes it known that she is pansexual, and she wears a pan bracelet with pride. And
yes,
I know Lydia
first
states
500 words.
Yeah, it's
very
right there.
And
I don't know if Lydia states exactly what her, or not Lydia, Eden. I don't know if Eden states exactly what her sexuality is, but she does directly state she likes girls.
Yeah, in my mind, she is a lesbian, but I don't. It didn't make sense for her to necessarily label herself as such. I think as she gets older, she's gonna probably try out some different labels, but I don't know if she's quite settled on one yet.
Yeah, she just knows she likes girls.
Yes,
and that's totally
very much
fine.
Girl.
Like, it's great to have the express representation of the label being there, but it's also okay to not super know what you're doing yet, and also have that kind of, so you have like the I know who I am, this is my label representation, and you also have the, well, I'm not sure what my label is, but I know I like or don't like this thing.
And there's also a character like Dorothy, who I think is not concerned with labels. She just likes who she likes, and but isn't really particularly interested in putting a label to it, because she's just vibing.
Yeah, we love a bi kitchen witch grandma.
Yes, it's, gosh, again, want to be Dorothy when I grow up. That's all.
And there's also gender fluid rep as well.
That's true.
That was just
Florian,
like kind of in there
fluid,
as a treat.
It is. He made that decision with absolutely zero input from me. It just sort of came up.
I love when they just drop that on you. You're just writing a book and they're like, by the way.
I will say, and this is like low-key spoilers, but also I've talked about it on social media, so I'm not really that stressed about it. Florian and Dorothy's relationship was another thing that, like, it was not in my outline. I did not intend for that. That was them. They went off and were like, hey, this is a thing. And I was like, yeah, okay.
And we love that for them.
We do. It wound up being a part of the book that I really like, because I think it's very cute, but
they have a really good back and forth.
Yeah, they're fun.
All right, so I'm pretty sure that this question has been answered throughout this interview already, but just for fun, would you rather live in a busy city where it's easy to meet new people but lasting relationships are hard to come by, or a small sleepy town where everyone knows each other but there's not much to do? So basically, Chicago or Fairbrook.
I wouldn't want to live in Fairbrook expressly, because it is, full of some people that I maybe wouldn't get along with. That said, small town, please. I'm very tired. I can't keep, like, I love going to cities for, like, a long weekend, but I can't keep up with that long term.
Honestly, same. I'm, like, I'm at that point in my life where Ray and I are trying to look for a place where we could maybe settle in and raise a family. And I'm like, I love the city I live in, but it's too expensive here. I'm just
Oh
like,
God, yeah, that's
let me
another thing.
find like like not a tiny town, but like, you know,
Yeah.
something smaller, something a little more rural, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where it's gonna be like a 5 or 10 minute walk to get to my closest neighbor
Yeah,
minimum. And
yeah.
because
I'm in like a place where I'm like I'm within walking distance to a small town with like a few restaurants, and like that's kind of where I'm at. I like somewhere in the middle, but yeah, definitely would pick a small town over a city. Presuming that small town was you know, queer friendly.
yes, which thankfully there are starting to be more queer friendly
Yes.
small towns in the world, but you always still gotta check, make sure that they're
Yes.
not like super queer phobic, super racist. Like,
Yes.
you
Also
know,
important.
you know what needs to happen? We as like the LGBT community just need to move out of the cities and just invade the small towns and just make them gay.
That this is the gay
We'll go
agenda.
in groups. All right, buddy system.
Yes. Yes. I like it.
Yes, I think we're pretty agreed on that one. And
Yeah.
there's another question that was partially answered, but I think there are probably more. What are your favorite scenes from There's Magic Between Us, and why?
Yes, so the treehouse scene is definitely a big favorite just because, again, it was one of the first ones that came, and I really like the caught in the rain trope. And this, you know, I think that rain scenes just kind of lend a sense of like intimacy and coziness, and I just like it. I like the vibe.
It
I
was also one of my
also
favorites. Not gonna lie.
nice.
Excellently well done there.
Thank you. I'm trying to get a lot of the scenes I like uh, are like later in the book, and I don't want to spoil it. There was only one bed scene later in the book, and that one is also one of my favorites because it's a really nice emotional beat for them, and I really liked seeing them kind of have that conversation. And you know, I can't get too much into it without spoiling, but that was a really fun one too. Uh, and also the firefly scene I really liked, which is about halfway through the book. Again, spoilers, but like the idea of like this midnight date was just very romantic to me.
I loved every single one of those scenes. I mean, I loved
These are
basically every single scene in this book,
It's
so,
true.
you know.
I have to clarify that all three of those scenes that I just listed were like major romantic beats, and I think that just says all you need to know about me. I'm just a sap deep down. Don't tell anyone.
The leading is strong. Janae has another awesome question. Who do you relate to more between the two, and who would you rather date?
You know, it's funny. I think as far as to who I relate to more, it's a pretty even split. In fact, I was joking. There, you know, I don't put too much stock by Myers Briggs, but I think it came down to I shared 2 letters with Lydia and 2 letters with Eden because, like I said, we're kind of different. Because I think, like Lydia, I have ADHD. Is really what it comes down to. Lydia is very much like I never specify that she has it, but she's like an I imagine her as like an undiagnosed ADHD because a lot of her impulsiveness and her inability to censor herself very much comes from that part of me. But on the other hand, I can also be quite hesitant when it comes to like big things, and I do like to have a plan in place. So in that way, I'm much more like Eden. And I could not imagine dating either of them because they are my daughters, and it feels weird.
Fair enough, and I won't dig into your personal life by asking, well, if there was just some random unnamed adult, which one would you, you know, with the
Yeah,
same personality?
yeah,
Like,
obviously I wasn't like I couldn't imagine it because it would feel like I said I can't even conceive of it just because I am very attached to them in like that sort of way, you know, like if you get too used to thinking of a character in a certain way, it's hard to imagine them differently. I guess. I don't know if that made any sense. I feel
Right.
like I just strung a bunch of words together.
Janae says fair, so must have
Yes.
made sense.
Good. I'm glad.
But yeah, I could, knowing you as a friend, I could definitely see bits of you in both Lydia and Eden. And
They're both very dear.
I think that's definitely like something that a lot of authors like. We just kind of pick little bits and pieces of ourselves and just kind of sprinkle them into the characters.
You add a little bit of spice.
Just a little sprinkling of a neurodivergence here, a little bit of type A personality here.
Exactly.
And it all works.
You know, I certainly hope so.
I think it does. I definitely am of the opinion that it works very well, especially in There's Magic Between Us.
Well, thank you.
So we're
Butter
coming...
me up a little more, why don't you?
Flattery will get you everywhere. Besides, that's what you're here for.
It's true. It's why I showed up. For the ego boost.
I come here, I do these author interviews because I love the book and I want to spoil the author.
Bless.
If I didn't love the book, I wouldn't ask you to do an interview or invite you on. So
I appreciate that.
All right, we're coming toward the end of the interview here. We're about 40 or so minutes into the interview. I was kind of thinking we'd go about an hour. So
yeah,
winding down a little bit. What should readers know about There's Magic Between Us before diving in? Are there any content warnings they should look out for, or tropes that they should look forward to?
Yes. So content warnings, there is kind of like implied assault in a minor character's backstory. It doesn't happen on screen, and it's not really belabored too much. But there is like that aspect of it. There is also like backstory element of, I guess, trying to get into it without spoiling too much, but a bad relationship. Lydia's mom had a bad relationship, and that's kind of touched on. Again, not too intense or anything, but that is something to be aware of. And as far as tropes, it's an opposites attract romance. It's very uptight loves wild kind of vibe. Treasure hunt, cottage core aesthetic. Pretty fun. I had a good time with it.
The cottage core aesthetic, guys. It's so good.
I am a sucker for a good cottage core aesthetic.
Like, I was reading a digital advanced reader copy of the book There's Magic Between Us because I got to be an ARC reader, and I already posted my review, so if you guys want to know the gist of my thoughts, that's on Amazon, where you can also go to pre-order the book, and I'll do more. But the way that I read this book was I had my little e-reader up on my computer, and then I put on like this lazy afternoon ambiance track with like the little stream going, because it kind of reminded me of the cover. And I put that in the background, and I put my e-reader in front of it, and it was peak aesthetic reading experience. It fits so perfectly with the book. So personally, I am of the opinion that this is the perfect summer read.
Oh, yeah, gosh,
just putting that out there. The vibes immaculate, the aesthetic on point, the cottage core TikTok worthy, just beautiful.
You've just put in my head the image of Lydia with a TikTok.
And I don't know she has one.
God, the chaos that would. Anyway, we would be here for another hour.
Before we get to the last question, I want to open it up to the chat. We've kind of been answering some chat questions throughout, but if there are any other questions that we have not answered that you have about this book, now would be the time to drop them in. Christina has one.
Yes.
So we talked fanfic, but what do you want fan art of? And please do tell me, because I'm working on getting back into drawing.
The treehouse scene. If somebody drew the treehouse scene, I would cry for a million years. And also the firefly scene.
Oh my god, the treehouse scene, but make it like the lo-fi playlist background.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. And let's see. really any scene, like any scene of them exploring the forest, any of those, early treasure hunt scenes. Also, again, I'm trying to not spoil. There's a scene where they get dressed up later, and that would be fun to see fan art of as well.
Oh, you gotta have the pretty dresses.
Yes. Um,
Oh, we got a good one from Janae. Would you mind sharing aesthetic songs for the readers? And then Atlas says yes. So I imagine there's probably a
well,
playlist.
I do actually have a playlist that I'm going to share post publication that has a number of aesthetic songs. There's a lot of lo-fi in there actually, but it's I assigned a song to every chapter, and so I will be releasing that post publication because I wanted to share a blog that kind of gave some of the details, and there's spoilers in it, so I wanted to wait till the book was published before I post it. But I do have a playlist. But I will say that for funsies, the song that I was listening to when I got the idea for the book is "Flowers" by In Love with a Ghost featuring Nori. It's a pretty common lo-fi song, but it's got like a very, I consider that to have a pretty strong connection to the book.
I think you shared that one with me, and then I immediately, I was like, oh, I hear this on TikTok all the time.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I'm like I said, the vibes.
It's got vibes.
Perfect. Good vibes.
But I have like a whole lo-fi playlist specifically. But this one has kind of like a mix of aesthetic songs and also like just, there's some ship songs that I really associate it with it, and there's some songs I really associate with certain characters. But yeah, we'll be releasing all of that.
Excited. I will be sharing that on all of my social media, and I forgot to put these links in the description because I am a disaster. But you can find Jill and follow her work on all social medias as by Jillian Maria, I believe. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Yes, by Jillian Maria on Tumblr and Twitter, and then Jillian Maria Author on Instagram, because Instagram glitched when I was trying to make that profile, and I can't use by Jillian Maria there. I'm very salty about it, but
just drop those in the chat. So if you want to continue following Jill's future works, make sure you see all the relevant stuff that's going to come out about There's Magic Between Us in this upcoming week, because if I am not mistaken, it is published on July 6th.
Yeah, it's 9 days away. I don't know. I'm bad at math. I'm a writer, but it's
yes,
coming up.
9 days away, and of course you should pre-order it now.
And if you pre-order it, you can enter to win the pre-order giveaway, which I will be giving away a candle, bubble bar, and a tea with a signed copy of the book. So
I'm gonna be pre-ordering a paperback copy, I think.
Nice.
Just I have it digital, but I prefer paperback, so I'm just gonna snag one of those, and then I could take pictures of it, put them on Instagram. You know how it is.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's such a nice cover. I love it so much.
It's so pretty. It is so pretty.
Right. Janae also asks, which fairy tales would you put both Lydia and Eden in individually?
I feel like I can picture so many for Eden. Like I feel like she would work well in like a Little Mermaid type situation, or maybe like I think Little Mermaid would work with Eden as the mermaid and Lydia as the prince that she rescues. I feel like that would be it for them.
I mean, Lydia would just jump into the ocean and then be like, "Oh crap, I can't swim."
Yes, that is. Oh my god, she would though, and she would absolutely, like, if she found out that a sea witch was messing with her girlfriend, would just stab her with a boat. I think that is very on brand.
Eden's like, when did you learn sailing? Now.
Yeah. But individually, I think Lydia would work in, gosh, she'd be like a knight or like something a little bit more aggressive, I think. Like very like an Arthur type thing, Sword in the Stone, where she's just like on this quest type vibe.
You know, I'm struck with a idea. because I have a book of Irish folk and fairy tales that specifically focuses on women. It's called Wild Irish Roses. And I'm like, Lydia fits in here with like all of these women because
She absolutely would.
women in Irish mythology, it literally is just women get what they want. And the various tactics that they employ to get what they want. And like, that's Lydia. She gets what she wants.
She does. She'll just go for it.
You can't tell her no.
You cannot. You simply cannot. She will not listen. She's very that DW meme, like, this sign won't stop me because I can't read.
We stan a female himbo.
She is. She is a herbo.
That's what they're called, herbos.
Yes.
Because it's not the other one. The other one is something different. This is...
Yeah.
This is a girl with himbo energy. It's different.
Yeah. Christina and I joke about Lydia and Jamie in Under No Illusions just both being herbos. They've got similarities. And there's also a character in one of Link's books that also has like curly hair and just is absolutely chaotic. So together they are the Curly Chaos Crew.
Oh my god, I love that. Blessed.
I actually drew fan art of Lydia, and I'm gonna mess up the character name pronunciation, so I'm not even gonna try. I'm sorry, Linked. But it's very cute because they are very much just chaotic and would feed into each other's chaos.
Just the stupidity feedback loop.
Yes. Which is why Lydia is with Eden, who can balance her out a little bit better.
Lydia gets things done. Eden guides her in the direction of getting the right thing done.
Indeed. Just needs a little bit more direction, but Eden also needs to get moving sometimes, so it works out.
Perfect balance. You love
Christina just said the live, laugh, yeet squad, and that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life, so thank you, Christina. Beautiful.
All right, and now we are on to our final question just to wrap things up, close out this wonderful interview. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute blast.
Much.
And
thank you for having me.
I will welcome you back anytime. I have had such a fun time.
Oh.
Last one is, what's next for your writing journey? So are you working on a new book? Are you taking a break to relax and recharge the creative battery? What's next?
Well, right now I am working on a young adult horror novel, actually, but I don't think that's going to be my next book that's published, just because this one's taken a little longer. It's a little bit more complicated, and I'm not sure if it's ready to go out there. I think my next book is actually going to be another young adult contemporary fantasy, but it's actually going to be the first in a series, which I'm very excited about. And it's going to be about some of the plot details are still a little sketchy. I have a first draft done, but I'm sensing some things need to change. But basically, an unwilling psychic gets roped into this magical investigation by a witch who has kind of infiltrated her school and her life and everything. So that's going to be very interesting.
Fascinating. I am hyped for that.
I'm very excited for that. To start working on that one again. I just finished the first draft recently. I'm kind of letting it chill before I figure out exactly what direction I'm going to take it. But
right, you want to let things kind of settle.
The loose idea is a 4-book series.
Very interesting. I will have my eye out for that because, as we know here, I always love your writing. I think you are just a fantastic author. And
thank you.
Your characters and your prose just kind of leap off the page for me. So I will always be looking forward to your next thing. But this in particular sounds right up my alley. I am so excited for that.
Oh, shucks. Thanks. I'm excited to get it out there.
All right, so that's it for my interview questions. So if anyone in the chat has any last questions or comments they want to make, now is the time to make it because we will be closing out soon. And again, Jill, thank you so much.
The chat seems to be devolving into chaos, which honestly is pretty on brand for this book. I'm here for it.
Everyone's cheering for Herbos, which we all should.
as it should be, indeed. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a great time.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. And remember, everyone, that you can pre-order There's Magic Between Us. It comes out on July 6th. There are links in the description to where you can pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So if you want to get a copy, make sure you check those out, because that will also enter you into the pre-order giveaway sweepstakes. I don't know what.
It will not automatically enter you. You have to sign up on a Google form that is pinned to the top of my Twitter. So if you want to be entered, please join that.
Yes, and you can find
Jill. I don't know
Jill,
how else to do it. I am sorry.
You can find Jill on social media at by Jillian Maria on Tumblr and Twitter, and at Jillian Maria Author on Instagram. I will edit those links into the description once we are closed out. And yeah, I think that is everything. So Janae says no questions, but just want to say it was fun getting to know you more.
Thank you.
Because you're both in the Rose Garden server, so.
That's right. That's right.
And if you want to support me and my content and allow me to have more authors on to interview, Patreon is down there in that description as well. For just $2 a month, you get a bunch of rewards for supporting my content, including membership to the Rose Garden Discord server, where you can chat with cool people like Jill Maria over her books. Because we have like a whole channel for Songbirds Refrain in there. Please come into the server and scream with me about Songbirds Refrain. I need it.
Oh, goodness.
Do this for me.
And I will just quietly watch.
All right. So thank you all so much for coming in the chat. Thank you for asking the questions. It was fantastic to see you all here. Thank you to Jill again for coming on and for writing such a fantastic book. I am so excited. I hope it's a huge success. It deserves to be a huge success.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. And I think that's going to be it. So one more time, thank you all for being here, and keep writing till next time.
Bye.